Hey, I'm here.
Hey Jeff, how's it going?
Good, good. Hey,
Hello.
Hello.
Is this a quiet time zone?
Yes, it really is. How have you been, Caleb?
Yeah, doing all right.
Good,
Which is
good.
nice. How have you been?
Not too bad.
Is it DST daylight saving time for you in the US yet, or is it still to change?
it hasn't changed yet. Yeah, we're exiting daylight savings time.
Okay. Oh, sorry. It's my Southern Hemisphere view of the world. So I heard recently that it's the candy lobby that makes the DST change post Halloween in
Oh,
the
really?
US.
Why? To get more.
To get more time to collect
Uh,
treats.
I wouldn't be surprised.
but it's supposed to be dark when you go trick or treating. You have to wait until the sun sets.
That's how it used to be, Jeff, but everyone goes
Yeah.
trick-or-treating during the day now, it seems. We got all our trick-or-treaters like from
Really?
4 to 6. Yeah.
4.
Yeah, we used to go late, I remember. You're right. It had to be dark and spooky and well, we can give folks a couple more minutes to join, and if this is a quick meeting, that's totally fine.
No worries.
Okay. I was just quickly reviewing the notes from last week or 2 weeks ago. I was quickly doing one of the action items that that I agreed to.
Oh no, did I have any action items?
I think we said we were gonna essentially agree on the charter. Give the after giving the work group some time to provide feedback.
Oh, yeah.
But I guess
What
maybe
was
we can.
our?
I think we just had to review it and more or less agree to it.
Okay.
So maybe we can do a quick read through if we've got time today, which looks like we will. Oh, cool. We have Hen as well. Hey, Hen.
Hey there. we go.
Okay.
Hey, welcome.
Thanks.
All right. Oh, thank you for updating the attendees. So we can go ahead and get started. If again, if we have a light meeting, that's totally okay. Doesn't look like we have any new faces, so we can go past that one. And
Yep.
then yeah, Jeff, you have some reminders for us for
Yeah, I just want to keep these
taking us to the end
reminders
of the
up.
year. Yeah.
Yeah, so people can know to make the right meeting time.
Yeah.
So yeah, December 1st will be our new APEC time, which is 3 hours earlier than this one.
Yeah.
Due to the both hemispheres changing time to get closer together. 15th will be EMEA. 29th is canceled. It's already canceled on our calendar. And then 12th will go again with that new APAC time going forward until whenever we spring forward again. If we ever do, maybe it's canceled for good.
Yeah, that's right.
Or no, I think we'll spring forward one more time and then never go back.
Oh boy.
We'll see what happens next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just reminder there, I think it makes sense to keep alternating up over the canceled meeting instead of calling that one APAC and then going back to EMEA on the 12th. I'll get Jory to update the 1st and the 12th and all the way through like March or April for all the APAC times.
Okay. And then I
Thank
guess
you.
yeah, thank you, Jeff. And then I think a quick housekeeping. I believe we were supposed to essentially quickly think about, you know, if we're good with the meeting times and cadences going into next year. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
I have one, which is that the APAC time is better than before. So having at least being able to make one meeting out of 2 every 4 weeks is better than it was before for me. So I'm happy with that over the previous version. So yeah.
Okay.
But like
I'm
I
happy to hear
am
that.
one example. It's not a representative sample.
Yeah, and I'm very much the bleachers over here. Like when I can attend, I do. When other meetings bully the schedule, I can't make it.
Yeah, I mean, I have noticed that our attendance is lower on the APAC times. I don't know if that's because it's just a worse time for everybody or if there's just too much confusion with the switching, which is why I've been trying to bring up the reminders each meeting and then, you know, get the calendar up to date
Yeah.
ahead of time.
Is it
So-
worth dropping a reminder in the Slack on the days that
Yes.
the meeting's on? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, anything we can do to like increase attendance on it would be good. And if it's the reminder problem, then yeah, let's try that would be great.
Be like a calendar bot in Slack.
Yeah. Let me.
Okay. Yeah, I do think it makes sense to alternate. One other thing too, I think, is the APAC times, I think are generally not don't work for folks in Europe. So which is fine, you know, there's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
that, but that might be part of the reason why we've had lower attendance.
Do we have many attendees?
I think we have at least a few, yeah.
Just a few. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's not particularly great for West Coasters, but I think that's where the change in time will actually help. So that's
Okay.
all right. It may also be the time of year is not great. There's a lot
Yeah, we're definitely getting towards that. Yeah.
of excuses.
Yeah.
Yeah, conference season too. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
It feels like it's always conference season, but anyway.
I'm with you on that. Every time I'm like, oh great, there's no more conferences. It's like, oh, there's one next week, or another one is just scheduled for like a one day in December. It's like, oh great. But okay, yeah, I guess we'll just we'll keep we'll keep doing the meeting times as we have, and we can always do a check-in maybe after a quarter or halfway through the year or something if we need to adjust. But overall, yeah, I would say the meeting times are working. So
I'd also suggest asking the ME at half of the meeting this question as well. This is an APAC oriented time frame, so
that's
yeah.
a good point. Yeah.
I just set myself a reminder for the 30th to set a chat message for the first meeting. So let's see how that goes. At least a one-off.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point though. Maybe for the 17th, we'll ask the same question about, you know, meeting times going into next year and what have you. Sweet. Guess then what we can do then is, since we've talked about it for some time, work group consensus can ratify the charter. Okay. Okay, so it looks like so regarding the charter, I think Jeff, you and I do need to have like a sync on it before essentially going to everybody in the working group to ratify it, at least according to the notes that I'm reading. With work group consensus, we can ratify the charter. So we would need to agree on the charter, and then with the work group consensus, ratify it. So I will set a action item
that we've done that already.
I'm sorry?
So I'd argue that we've done that already.
That's true. We really have. Yeah. Yeah, we really have. Okay. So then I'm going to put down on here. Agree on work group charter. Giving this meeting and 11/7 meeting opportunity for feedback and objections. So I guess while we have this group here, are there any I guess and I totally understand, you know, we got to give people time to prep and whatnot. So I'd recommend if we can by the next meeting, let's essentially, if there are any feedback or objections to the charter until next time. So I'm going to put work group has until end of meeting 11/7 for feedback and objection. So then we can set for our 11/17 meeting at the end. Our last agenda item will be basically ratifying the charter. So that can be one more thing, one thing we can knock out and be done with. So good, there's that. Okay, yeah. So yeah, so as we're moving forward, now would be a good time if anyone has any updates. I have a quick update for the work group, but I thought we could start, you know, if anyone has something they'd like to bring to the table. Maybe Caleb, if you want to give us a quick update on some of the criticality score updates. I know y'all have been very active on the repo, which is always good to see, and I always give you all the shout out for all the work you're doing today there. So yeah, we could start with that, and then after Caleb, if anyone has any updates or feedback for the work group, the floor is open after Caleb.
Sounds good. So after the last, I'm probably 2 weeks behind. So Randall and I were talking about how we can use the criticality score project for one particular use that he's interested in, which is in a GitHub action. And I'm also, I guess there's three streams of work that I'm kind of working on simultaneously. There's that. There's also trying to deprecate Python once and for all. And the final is productionizing the criticality score collection, so we can collect the data frequently, and it will help us iterate on improving the score itself and the signals that we collect. So I'm working on those simultaneously. The work towards supporting a GitHub action and deprecating Python, I've got a commit that's waiting, and then there'll be one hopefully today as well that follows it, that makes that something I can move forward with. So I have something to give to Randall on that, which is great. I do have to think about how we cut releases, which is not something I've done up to this point, where I mark actual versions and do that sort of thing, but I'll do that soon. I'm also in the process of building out a worker. So the productionizing builds upon the scorecard infrastructure and makes use of that because they're basically aligned. They take a list of repos, they do a bunch of collection based on the repos, and then they store those results. So I've been working with Spencer, who is working on the scorecard project, to make it possible to share infrastructure. So we're currently moving, I'm implementing a worker there for doing the collection, and hopefully it's not too far off being able to have this running in production continuously, which is something we're looking forward to having up and running. So that's kind of the focus. In the background, I'm also drafting a blog post. If anyone's interested in contributing, please reach out to me as well. Particularly looking at, and some of these work are particularly around deprecating Python and productionizing are kind of important for this. So the theme of the blog post will be about that it's running at scale, but deprecating Python is kind of important. If people are then looking at the project, having something that's not a dead-end Python script, but a maintained binary code, that would be really that would be really helpful. So that's partly why the Python deprecation is kind of interesting as well. So that's a brief update on criticality score. Does anybody have questions on that? I can also give an update on package analysis if you're interested as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I have two questions about criticality score. The first one, I'm curious, and I'm sorry if this is answered somewhere, but essentially, how representative is the data from criticality score? Would you say it's a pretty good representative sample of all the open source projects out there, or is it a very good representative sample of all the open source projects on GitHub? I'm just curious as to really how comprehensive
Yeah.
criticality score runs.
So it's I'd probably say it's representative of open source projects on GitHub, and whatever proportion of the total open source projects that is, I don't know, but that's really what it's oriented towards at the moment. Certainly GitHub isn't the only endpoint that we want to support, or the only source host that we want to support, but it certainly covers a bulk of the ecosystem at the moment. And yeah,
Cool.
yeah, so that's kind of roughly what it's covering. It's also the scores are biased towards popularity and activity, and that's something that I'd like to fix, because I don't think that's especially from the discussions we've had here as well, that's necessarily the most important thing to be ranking. It's pretty easy to go and find popular projects and ones that have lots of activity, and they're not necessarily the ones that are most critical. Yeah,
Cool.
Does that answer the question?
It does, yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And then my other,
I have a small update as well in that direction. We are able to use the BigQuery data set from deps.dev, and my next kind of focus may be on looking at extracting GitLab repositories and GitHub repositories from that data set, and using that as a way to find more projects that are beyond the GitHub ecosystem. So there are other ideas in that space as well. We could be Google Dorking and that sort of thing, but yeah, we'll probably focus on extracting GitLab repos from deps.dev as the next step.
Very cool. Awesome. And then I had another quick question about if there's any thoughts or talks, or even if this currently exists. Again, pardon my being my naivete, but if there's any way for the output of the data of the criticality score to be, easily digested, either through an API, or I know there used to be a web page or a URL that had a link basically to all of the output of the criticality score. I think it was like top 100 overall, and then it was broken down, I think, by language. Is that something that still exists or is updated, or is something that y'all are looking to have?
Yes. So the idea will be initially that links will be in the GitHub repo to the public data, and the plan is to have that available both in BigQuery for people who are happy to use GCP and via CSV in Google Storage. So that people who don't want to use BigQuery can still have access to the data. The CSV is also, so that's kind of the plan.
Awesome.
Yeah, I have, Hen mentioned that we did update the 20-star and higher, and that's currently online as well. So, yeah.
Nice. Very cool. Wonderful, wonderful. Because I know there's a lot of talk about how criticality score is to be used by different groups, and I know one thing that comes up a lot is being able to track and view a list or a set of, let's say, the top 100 criticality score projects, and use that as a data point. So that's awesome. So BigQuery.
I will say long term as well, we'd love a website, but I mean that's down the chain.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask if the CSVs were available on kind of a website link rather than a. I think I get them from an old Slack link that's probably gone by now.
Oh, I can give you so the GitHub repo points to a BigQuery bucket, and I'm pretty sure in that that bucket it includes the links to the most recent one. Actually, it links straight to the file. Okay, I will have to update that to be actually to the to a browsable page rather than the actually no. I think it's confusing. There's two links, and there's one that's just web browser here in the thing, and that is a kind of GCS file for browsing. So that's what it looks like. That's linked from the GitHub project homepage.
Oh, cool.
And if there's a 2020 06 07 directory which has the most recent one that I did that you can grab. So hopefully that's not the most recent one come the end of December. So
cool. Because I also find it very useful to just filter by the projects I own, right? Like on my company's projects, to look at those and be able to go look at CNCF projects. I've roughly found it a good, not perfect, but good enough way to be like, the top of this list, that's the top of my list. The bottom of this list is the bottom of my list. If I zoom in, I don't like that this one's above this and that kind of stuff, but it's good from a distance view. It works really well.
Yeah, so that's certainly the value I think it provides at the moment. And I'd like it to be a bit more accurate, but in terms of like a bulk, like look at the course position of things, it's probably okay. Yeah. And I mean, this is the point of iterating, is that it gets better over time.
Yeah.
Start somewhere. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Caleb. And then you said you wanted to give an. Oh yes, Rob.
Yeah, sorry for diving in. I'm newer to the OpenSSF community. I mentioned this in another forum. And again, I feel bad asking for something without volunteering to help create it. But is there any sense of an industry filter? So the industry I work in is financial services, and it would be useful. Sorry about my voice. It would be useful at times for us to be able to see an industry filter. Even a subsector like capital markets versus consumer banking versus buy side. And then there's also wrinkles like I saw on the slides language, for example, right? So if there was like a major vulnerability in OCaml, for example, that might not mean much to many organizations, except for, I think Facebook uses or Meta uses OCaml. But in financial services, that would be significant to us. So I just was curious if there was any thought to industry filters, with the recognition that obviously that's a lot more work.
So earlier this year, we had an interesting discussion internally around the idea of allowing companies to so obviously the challenge around providing this per industry is actually knowing what's used in each industry. And I guess the big question for criticality score is like, it would be really accurate if you actually knew how private companies were, what they were depending on. So we were thinking, how can we incentivize companies to tell us the stuff that they're using? And one of the options was as an intelligence capability where people in the financial industry may be interested in what are the dependencies that are like, what's the critical dependencies in the financial industry? In the healthcare industry might be the same, and various other industries will have different interests in the things that they're using. So, I mean, this is more of a long-term idea. It would be, can we collect, incentivize companies to share their dependencies with the view of providing a service where they can look at the dependencies used across their industry. So this is a great idea. I'm not exactly sure how we solve it in the open sense. Yeah, so SBOM sharing is one sort of idea. So there's obviously like privacy concerns around how to do this in a way that companies feel safe around sharing these sorts of information. But it would be super valuable having the data of, in terms of what companies are actually depending on in providing an accurate criticality score. But on the flip side, we can use the kind of industry, this is what your industry depends on as an incentive to help companies do that. So yeah, it's a great question. I really would love to be able to have
because we have in our industry, I'm sure we're not unique, but in our industry, we have industry specific kind of higher up on the OSI model type of projects that might be specific to financial desktops or trading interoperability or standards that define the shapes of derivatives for, you know, settlement between counterparties. I mean, just specific stuff that, just like every industry is going to have its own specific stuff. Healthcare and public sector and discrete manufacturing might have a bunch of specific things around supply chain or whatever, you know. Cool. Well,
yeah.
Keep us, I'd be interested in seeing how we could help and get a case on that. So
yeah, that's a great idea. I think the suggestion was to try doing that manually first as well, just asking companies in a particular industry, hey, what, like, if we collected this data from you and essentially your competitors and aggregated that in a way where it's anonymous, would you be interested in that, partaking in that? That'd probably be a good way to experiment with that concept.
And Finos, you know, is also a Linux Foundation. Linux Foundation. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That is that consortia, at least for most of the sell side, some of the buy side as well. Because with them, just parenthetically, we're also talking about how we can get benchmark APIs, for example, like when we talk about, you know, how many active open source contributors we have, and then what percentage of that of our engineering team. The next question that we get is, you know, or we expect we will get from our leadership is, okay, so what's the industry, you know, is that good? How does that compare with the rest of the industry's contribution rate? So industry specific stuff for us is interesting. Sorry, I cut somebody off.
Oh, no, it's all good.
My suggestion on the, oh, sorry, Minowa, you have your hand.
Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, yeah, thank you. So I just had an aside comment on this. Myself and a few others, we are organizing a conference for the open source software maintainers to basically understand their pains, and the first version or the first incarnation of that will be in January, but we are also starting to plan the subsequent versions of that, focusing on specific verticals. And fintech is an important vertical. We have already actually like brainstormed that actually came or rose near the top, if not the top. So the next incarnation of that particular event, which is probably going to be around April, May next year, would be focusing probably on one of these verticals. And so, Rob, what I can do is I'll probably like connect with you on the side and then like keep you informed regarding this. And what Kelly was saying, it's essentially it's going to be people who are competitors, partners in the same industry space coming together, sharing their pains, and then we get some common understanding. It's really a manual process. Unfortunately, probably it cannot be done automatically because every industry is different, but we are trying to do it from a different perspective as in organizing a conference, understanding or getting real data from people, understanding their pains, and then using them. So basically that could be one other thing that you might keep a tab on. Thank you.
Henry, do you mind if I respond to that quickly? I know you have your hand up. So the only thing I would just say on that is, well, actually a couple of thoughts. So first of all, sometimes when people say fintech, they mean like fintech startups, like some, startup that's getting Series A funding from USV or something, right? Do you mean like,
in this case,
do you mean fintech, just financial services general?
In this case, because it's open source, like with OpenSSF, we were also thinking of involving the OpenSSF, the major partner. So that would include the major banking partners, etc. involved. Okay. So it's probably not like the small fintech. That's not what we're initially focusing on.
The only other thing I was going to say too is just, I mean, like a lot of the industries, but us in particular, antitrust is something we always have to be very mindful of. So one of the nice things about using the rails of Finos for the Linux Foundation, I'm not saying this isn't possible, but we can ride the rails of their antitrust policy. So just know that whenever we're talking with our competitors and or in a, like that's what's nice about the OpenSSF, right? Is, I think this group is actually technically led by one of our competitors, right? So we have these kind of safe forums or safer forums. So just give that some thought. If you're gonna do a conference and you want competitors to be talking to each other about sharing data or stuff, let's just make sure we, dot our I's and cross the T's.
Definitely.
Sorry, Henry, you've had your hand up. I feel terrible.
Fine. I was going to follow up with Caleb on my SBOM comment in terms of where I was thinking was, we've got lots of companies all over the place who are going to start to get a bunch of SBOMs and nothing really to look at those SBOMs as a forest rather than a bunch of trees. And it feels like that's kind of where you're going to be going, is how to add up all these SBOM entries together and give you a big picture. And the output of that, it gives you the anonymization that can go into a central group of this group, this vertical, everyone. So maybe it's getting ahead of what will people want when they've got a large number of SBOMs just sitting there as their kind of how to get a view at it.
That's very, yeah. So if that's an idea we've been considering, I'd also I'll mention the Guac project as well that Google announced is kind of oriented around this concept as well, of kind of aggregating all this data and making it searchable. So that's worth mentioning as well, that might provide some value as it expands. I'll just search for Guac, and that's really not the right thing to search for. Yeah, Guac security. Yeah, yeah. So just worth mentioning that as well, that there's already kind of work that's somewhat related. Although having a way to search all this data is interesting. Having a way to like ingest that into the score itself is also something that I'm really interested in doing. So maybe that Guac is the thing that we can source this data from, or maybe that we can get people to contribute it in other ways. But yes, SBOMs is probably the way that we kind of started. In fact, this idea stemmed from trying to have using a zero knowledge protocol for sharing SBOM data. But yeah, it's probably more maths than actual practical value.
Wonderful. And then Caleb, I believe you said you were also going to give us a quick update on, I believe it was All-Star. Or
No,
package analysis?
package analysis.
Yes.
Package analysis is still still getting worked on, which is excellent. There's another, I think I mentioned this last time, we have another Googler who's working on this full-time or as part of their job, which is great. They're currently focused on introducing some static analysis support as well, which is kind of a new area for package analysis. We are also looking at revamping the data structure as well to make it a bit more like scalable and ready for expansion and different types of data. So that's something super interesting in terms of what's going on. It's great to have extra people working on it too, because it's kind of a project that, even though it's ticking along, and doesn't have a whole lot of output that's visible, people seem to resonate with the concept of doing these sorts of security and testing on open source packages. So yeah, I'm happy that it's getting invested in and there's continued interest. So yeah, we also have an intern at Google who'll be working on automating some of the detection side of things.
Hey, Caleb, along those lines, and I can't commit anything, but we're trying to entice our developers to get more involved in the OpenSSF work by giving them specific examples of things they could work on. So you may say, oh, just go look at our good first issues list, but is there something like a good first issues list that, like, we have to make it so atomic and bite-sized? Like, I'd love to give them 2 or 3 things and almost target those a couple groups. But if there are any and you can think of it, I'm happy to share it with our engineering community and see if we can entice a few folks to get involved and pitch in.
Sure thing. We've been trying to improve the first issue list in package analysis as issues to make sure that they are actually useful for people or actually something that people can work on. We'll do another pass of that as well, just to improve the list and expand it. Yeah, and I'd like that to be like the canonical source. There's also the package feeds project that package analysis pulls from that has been underinvested in. I will go through and try and annotate some of the issues there around good first issue, because I think that could do with some investment as well around improving it. And there's some capabilities I'd love for it to have that we could use as well in package analysis. For example, it gives a feed of package updates at the moment, but I'd also love to have that an artifact feed rather than a package feed per se, because Python is funny. So yeah, those sorts of things are, that's another project that has a lot of opportunity in it as well. So I'll make that an action item to kind of follow up on.
Can't promise anything, but if we can share a few with our internal engineering community, and maybe we'll get a bite. If there's something that we can be helpful on, so don't want to push in if there's.
So what sort of static analysis that you were referring to, Caleb? I'm just curious.
So it's largely oriented around building up the infrastructure to actually be able to do static analysis initially. We have a focus on obfuscation detection as kind of the minimum viable first use case. A lot of, like, that is one of the common things amongst most malware, is that there is some form of obfuscation employed. So having a way to do that detection is very interesting to us in terms of the stack analysis. But the idea of having it built in a way where if there is a language that doesn't have it supported, that's easy to introduce, or if there's a package analysis, a static analysis testing tool that provides interesting results, that we can integrate that as well. There's some work around making the results comparable between different tools, and we haven't yet invested in that space. But initially it will be about just running the analyzers themselves.
So how is it different from, like, let's say what the Omega guys or Alpha Omega guys from the Omega side they're doing on, like, using static analysis? Like they have a Docker thing.
So there's I think the kind of oriented the end goal is different. So in our case, we're interested in understanding what open source packages are doing or capable of doing. So and the view is to be able to provide that to developers or consumers of open source so they can make an informed decision about whether they are going to trust a package or not. So if they see that something that is a very boring package has network access, they might decide that's not something that they want or that they aren't going to trust it. So in the Alpha Omega case, the static analysis is used as a tool for finding areas to improve code and to find vulnerabilities. Whereas in our case, it's about understanding the behavior of the code. Is it doing stuff that's suspicious or dangerous or that you wouldn't want in your program? Like, does it have system calls or, is it touching the file system in weird ways and that sort of thing? So that's more, so our use is more on the finding strange behavior. Their case is like finding areas where you can fix security flaws. So
do you have specific static analysis tools that you're using in mind that you want to integrate, or because I'm familiar with static analysis in general for a long time, and I'm not aware of tools that are doing specifically what you guys are asking, which is very interesting.
There are, I mean, the one example that I could point to that's interesting is something like socket.dev. They do static analysis to pull out a bunch of behavioral things on JavaScript packages. So you can go and look up a JavaScript package and it will tell you like this thing's interesting, or it's got a network API call, or it's doing these interesting things, and so maybe you shouldn't trust it.
Or your basic Android apps, like if they tell you, like when you're installing Android, it tells you that, okay, this is gonna do this, this, and this to your, if you're like attaching your Gmail account or something like that, or it's gonna do the phone. So those are used as from a different. I've never used that or heard that in terms of like the static analysis tools detecting this kind of stuff. That's why I'm curious. Like, is there any specific tool that you're using or not? But yeah, I'll look into it. Thank you.
So it's going to be like, we haven't really, I mean, there's general static analysis tools like semgrep or Bandit that are used for finding security, like interesting security related code and problems in code. How that relates to solving our problem, they may be useful, they may not be. We haven't really dug into that side of things.
Caleb, was Socket the one that was featured on changelog like back in earlier this year?
I think the maintainer, one of the founders of Socket.dev is a frequent podcaster and has, I think, a connection to the changelog as well. So I've spoken to them too, and they are a part of the OpenSSF as well. So that's a rough sense of where package analysis is going. I was going to say the intern is coming to do automated detection. Currently, detection is done manually by manual threat hunting. We do find a lot of malware, even things that are being reported in the media. We are seeing, but like trying to come up with a way to do that at scale where we don't have to employ manual effort is what we'd like. And the end of that is publishing an open feed that's probably going to be OSV based that organizations can consume to detect whether these packages are being used, and also to prevent malicious packages accidentally getting imported by organizations as well by integrating with OSV based pipelines. Anyway, that's a rough update. I don't want to steal the whole meeting.
No, it's all good. Thank you so much for those updates. Does anyone have any other questions or comments for Caleb?
A small one. I had the question of whether, like, a package contains an unusual binary was within scope. It's less the malicious space and more the sloppy space, I think, of the areas that kind of worry me is a package who have basically put stuff in that they are not the security thinking entity for. So it might be, you know, a random NPM who've built a package for an FFmpeg executable. And when FFmpeg have a security issue, they're not telling this random NPM about it.
This is an interesting signal, and it's way worse than you imagine. The packages that are pulling in strange binaries. Pipey is kind of, I'm saying okay. They have binary distributions. People can build FFmpeg or other things in their source distributions and have the binary included in Pipey. So there's but there's no infrastructure around how do you make sure those are maintained. NPM is worse because it has no native binary support, and so people use like NPM libraries to manage that. They end up pulling them off S3, for example, but there appears to be no validation that is actually the artifact that you expect. So there's no hash pinning or anything like that verifies the provenance of the artifact that's being given to them. So yeah, it's not great, and this is very common. Very common.
And I'm not even thinking about the what if it's not the thing I think it is. I'm actually further up on just this individual who did this is probably never going to know about a CVE coming out for the version.
Oh no!
Like
this is
that, and it's bad anyway.
Yeah, so that's a great question. Yeah, that's sort of like there's a research paper in that by a university to go and look at the binaries that are being included in NPM, ecosystem packages, and how up to date they are, or whether they're like how long it takes them to update with an upstream dependency, like change in patches or vulnerabilities, that sort of thing. So that, yeah, it's from my observation, I think it's actually pretty terrible. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's why I raise it. Like also in the Maven world, you basically have 20 years of doing shading and bundling and Uber and various other different ways of putting someone else's class files next to your class file as a big vague mess that maybe is something you could trust someone might update, but probably not. Okay, because that's where when I look at package analysis, that's kind of I'm looking and going, great, will this tell me whether there's stuff in here I should worry about in that respect? Because that's the one that's been interesting me recently.
The answer is yes, I'd like it to actually expose that. Like this has native binaries in it. Maybe you should be careful.
Cool.
Yeah, that's something that's certainly interesting. And on a personal level, my trust of anything from a native binary has gone through the floor. So.
Yeah, I'm very much focused on like, does it look like this binary came from the project themselves? Good. I now have at least some trust belief that they will be the ones who will fix the mess when there's a mess. It's very human, right? Like, how do you know this binary looks and smells like this? And does this project look like it's part of actually the bigger project, or just a random person from 5 years ago who moved on? Yeah, that one's tough. Okay, cool. Thank you, man.
It gets scary very fast when you start asking questions.
Oh yeah, House of Cards.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, we are coming up on the last 10 minutes of the meeting. I thought we could, I have one really quick update for everyone. We just released an audit report earlier this week. I think it was on yesterday. I'm losing track of the days, but this was actually we had two audits that we released. One was for Python Tough, and one was for Jackson Core and Jackson DataBind. So a lot of cool stuff there. Feel free to check that out. Let me know if you have any questions about it. But yeah, just more of these security audits being done to find and fix vulnerabilities and improve security posture of pretty critical projects. Jackson was originally based off of the Harvard Census 2 study as one of the most critical projects. So that was one of our main inspirations for doing that one. So just thought I'd share those results. And then lastly, with the last 10 minutes or so of the meeting, I'd love to open the floor for anyone who would like to chat or bring something up or talk about ideas or yeah, so I thought we could leave it open and yeah. Oh, thank you, Hen. Appreciate it. Yeah, Jackson is, I mean, it's everywhere. It's one of those projects where sometimes it gets to me when we're talking about, oh, well, which projects are more critical than others, or how do we rank some of these projects? And I feel like there are some where it's like they're so ingrained into everything, whether, you know, it's your particular organization or not. It's there, you know, it's up there. So I'm hoping we can find more of those projects that, you know, we can all agree are pretty important. And yeah, like you see in the space, you know, these projects have never been audited before. I mean, Jackson is just a single maintainer who just loves doing it. And, you know, granted, he's really good, but, you know, it's just one person, you know, these projects need all the help they can get. So
yeah, I mean, I love seeing you do it on Jackson because Log4j got so much noise, but Log4j is a team of people with a foundation behind it, security people to help them, right? There's a structure there. Jackson's one guy, and if his day job gets busy, it gets hard, right?
Exactly.
So
yeah,
that's where I think that's the really big story for OpenSSF is helping Jackson rather than helping Log4j. You know, saying that as an Apache person.
thank you, Anne. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. And yeah, so now the floor is open. If anyone has anything they'd like to run by the work group.
So I have a question to you. I mean, I don't know whether this is specific for this forum, but I'm just curious. So one of our clients recently asked us to actually do a couple of audits on a couple of open source projects that they are doing. And I mean, we have not, as an organization, we don't typically do it, but it's an important client. So obviously we are doing that. I'm just like, and you guys have been doing it for some time, but as the, like, in order to call it a security review versus an audit, like for example, in order to do the audit, have you gotten some certification of some sort, or you provide some yeah, like stamp of approval of some sort that you need to qualify calling it an audit versus just a security review, or that I just want to be politically correct, like somebody coming back to us and say like, oh, you did this. I mean, we're doing it as a favor. We can do this. I think we have good capabilities, but it's just like, do we need some sort of like stamp of approval, or did you guys have have those kind of things? I'm just curious because you just mentioned this auditing thing.
Yeah, it's a great question. There is really no, I would say, industry standard in the open source space on auditing. That's one thing we are trying to, one space that we're trying to fill. We take a lot of inspiration from the IIA, the Institute of the Institute of Internal Auditing, or internal auditors, which provides a lot of really good guidelines for doing internal auditing, which is very similar to what which is essentially the same as an independent or third-party audit. So there's a couple really key things there, like objectivity. Of course, you know, you have to be an independent organization that doesn't report to the same organization as you know, who you're auditing. So objectivity is a big one. There's one called do professional care, which is a pretty, I think it's a jargony term. Like, it essentially just means, you know, doing things, you know, meticulously with professional care. So yeah, that's a big one. And then I would say the most important thing is essentially doing a risk-based assessment over on what are the brittle parts of the project, and trying to focus on that, focus on what those high risk areas of the project are. So being very risk-based is a good strategy, and it's very consistent with best practices in internal auditing. But yeah, like you said, I
was more worried about the legal ramifications of calling it an audit or not. It seems like there isn't any, or something that I would worry about. But I would be comfortable actually saying it more thorough security review versus an audit? Because to me, like audit is more like a something that has like, let's say PwC does an audit. I mean, Open Refactory is not has not done this kind of stuff. I mean, we're doing it as part of like the delicate dance that you have to do with the clients or the major clients and so on. But it's yeah, I was just like curious about, because the audit came up.
So yeah, it's a great question, and I attempted a little bit to answer this question too in the CNCF impact report, where I laid out a pretty basic definition for what a security audit is, what the goals are, and really just trying to come up with a basic definition to fall back on. But I definitely think there has to be a level of thoroughness as part of a security audit, and I think the best thing you can do is, and it's what's used in the audit field, is the term reasonable assurance. So you're not really providing anything beyond reasonable assurance that you reviewed it for security problems and found what you found. And but it's a good question, but I don't think there's really any legal ramifications with the wording.
Isn't it kind of an issue of licensure and licensure by geography, right? So like a financial audit, which is not what you're talking about, is a different thing, right? Like you're certified, that requires in the United States CPA license, right?
Yes.
Correct. Yeah.
But you're talking about a systems audit, which is, the licensure would be things like a CISA license or something like that, right? And then or that just as one, but it's a information an information systems or a systems audit is a different thing. I mean, it could be an input, I guess, into a financial audit if it's a source of risk, but I think they're sort of different things, right? By the way, I think the Big Four are starting to get into this space. I believe they are.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
They certainly, I think, do license audits.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks. Oh, and the other question that I had, I don't know whether we have enough time. Maybe I'll ask that separately. I'll probably connect with Caleb separately, which is, so we are right now in the process of building a new tool, like a new, like taking ICR or intelligent code repair into a new language. We right now have Java and Python. We're now starting to look into Go. So I'm curious about like the specific, like, is there a list of the Go, like the top projects in Go? What would be those critical projects? And like also maybe like speak with somebody. I'm trying, so I've done Go coding like 8 years ago. We actually built the first refactoring tool for Go. It was even before the Go API was finalized and so on. But coming back, like there's been like 8 years of dust and haven't worked on that. So also connecting back with my Google contacts who are not part of the Go team anymore. They're scattered elsewhere and so on, but trying to find out what are the specific problems that these static analysis tools are finding or not being able to find, and possibly trying to bridge that particular gap, as ICR has successfully done for Java and Python cases. But is there like a list of the critical projects also available for Go as well?
There should be in the list, yes.
In the criticality score list, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the criticality score list should have a Go version.
Okay. Sure, that will be a start. Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Manohar. And so it looks like we're right on, we're at time. So just want to thank everybody, Caleb for the updates, everyone for the good discussion, thought-provoking discussion. Look forward to seeing everyone again in 2 weeks, which we will be meeting at the EMEA time. I believe it's 11 a.m. Central Time, 9 a.m. Pacific, and noon Eastern Time. So look forward to seeing everybody. Thanks again, and talk to you all soon.